I'm here with Veritas Suicide to talk about Suicide Puppets' latest upcoming release, Beyond the Veil, out October 13th. You must be looking forward to it. The date is fast approaching. Thank you very much for taking the time. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on.
So let's talk about this release that's coming out October 13th, Beyond the Veil. But before we talk about the actual release, let's talk about the sound of the band and the sound on this release. How would you describe it?
That's a very fair question. It's industrial metal meets symphonic metal, which also has black metal influences, all wrapped into one.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that question because from song to song, there is a pattern. I mean, there's a DNA of the band, obviously, but you could see so many different influences coming in that's very hard to define it under one umbrella. When you have a sound that's that versatile, does that help you creatively when you're working on new material, or does it sometimes hinder it?
I think it's helpful. Excuse me. I think it's helpful creatively because the door is wide open for so many different multiple genres to come in, so we can pull from this one and that one and this one and just kind of mash it all in together and make it, who we are as Suicide Puppets.
When you try to find inspiration for your music, for what you're creating, and specifically for Beyond the Veil, where do you look, or to who do you look?
Well, for Beyond the Veil, a lot of the influences, believe it or not, came from real life serial killers and horror films.
You're a big fan?
Huge fan. The entire band, our entire ethos is centered around serial killers, murder, and death.
I love it. So I got to ask you, first of all, favorite serial killer? I know this is a horrible thing to ask, but like I'm obsessed as well. Like I watch every single freaking documentary, movie, whatever it is. So who's your favorite?
My favorite, that's a toss-up. I actually have two that I kind of enjoy. I say enjoy, but you know what I mean. Richard Ramirez, and we actually have a song about him called 666. And then Richard Kuklinski, who actually worked for the mob. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not.
That one I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, actually the song Every Day on the EP, I almost called it something wrong. On Beyond the Veil, the song Every Day is actually slightly modeled after Richard Kuklinski.
Wow. So what's his story for those that are not as familiar?
Rough. This is just gonna be a quick little cliff notes for Richard Kuklinski. He just grew up, he was a bad dude. He wound up somehow he was able to finagle his way into the mob, and he just became a contract killer. And he had a family life on the side. His family had no idea what he was doing. They just thought he was a businessman. He would get phone calls in the middle of the night and be like, hey, I gotta go. And then he would come back and they just had money. And his wife never questioned it until he finally got caught.
It's normally the way it is. It's like as long as the money's coming in, no questions asked. That
Right.
until you get caught. With Richard Ramirez, there is the your I'm trying to find the right word. It's really hard to find the right word when you talk about serial killers. But when it comes to him being one of your favorites, does it have anything to do with how metal perhaps he was, or that doesn't play a role whatsoever?
No, that really doesn't play a role whatsoever. Just really like the psyche of the man himself and just how he was. Like at one point, I think at the hotel he was staying at, somebody noticed him outside and he was just covered in blood. And since it was out there in California, like nobody like questioned it. Like, oh, he's just an actor, right? Like seriously, the dude's covered in blood.
It just tells you how fucked up California is. That just goes like, eh. I'm sure if he was on the streets of New York, probably would get the same result.
Fair.
You know, mine is actually the Zodiac killer.
Okay.
Like the fact that we've never got to find out who he was, him and Jack the Ripper. I think
Yeah.
those two, because of the fact that we can't put a name or a face to who they are. I mean, there's a lot of speculation, obviously, about who they could be, but we don't
Right.
know who they are, and that's what intrigues me. Now, when it comes to you guys putting this EP together, is it easier to make an EP creatively than a full-length album? Do you have more freedom to go kind of anywhere that you want, or for you guys, it's the same exact roadmap?
For us, it's basically the same exact roadmap. It actually doing an EP shortens things up just a little bit because you're only talking about a handful of songs as opposed to a full length album. Ironically enough, when we put this EP together, it's not necessarily a concept EP, but all the songs, I mean, it's pretty much, they're all roll into one gigantic story, but it wasn't done intentionally. So it's not necessarily a concept, but it can be considered a concept EP.
It's like a theme.
Yeah, more themed. Yeah, that's a better word to use.
Yeah. How is the creative process for you guys? How do you approach the making music and writing the lyrics? How is it?
Uh, it's a pretty straightforward process. One of the guitar players will come and say, "Hey, listen, I got this great riff." So they start playing the riff, and then our bass player, he'll start laying down a bass line for it, and I'll hear something, then I'll start putting down my drum tracks to it. And then the other rhythm guitar player will start picking up like a rhythm line, and then the vocals, it all comes down to Twisty. Twisty is very personal when it comes to his vocals. So that's to ask him how he does his writing process for vocals. That's more of a question for him than me, because like I said, that's very personal to him.
What are some of the lasting memories do you have of working on this EP with the guys?
So we recorded this EP up at Legacy Recordings in Wilkes-Barre,
I figure
PA.
there's some stories.
Oh, there's definitely some stories. The whole EP was produced by Josh Balls, formerly Motionless in White. And that guy's a trip. I love that guy to death. While we were up there, like the whole experience at Legacy, it's the first time we ever recorded at Legacy. It's a fairly new studio. Just the amount of like tricks and jokes and stuffs that would just go on, and getting things thrown at you while you're trying to lay down your tracks, just general nonsense while up in the studio. And our mead sponsor, we're sponsored by a meadery called Goblin Alchemy. They came up and they brought a whole bunch of mead. So it's just a bunch of guys drinking mead and trying to record songs up in the studio.
Sounds like a great time. You should
It
have done
was.
a vlog or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it was something else, man. Yeah, we love going up there. They're great guys. And the whole EP started just by recording Death Note, the single off of the EP. How all that came to be is Josh Balls was like, "Hey, I really want to produce a song for you guys." So we came up with Death Note, and then the EP just came out of that.
When your guys are in the studio going through all of that stuff, is it almost a way of losing track of reality and just focusing on the world of Suicide Puppets?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's one thing we love about recording. Once we go into studio, we shut ourselves in. When we go to the studio, we live there, we stay there, we eat there, we sleep, we do everything there. So yeah, we literally just get immersed in the entire Suicide Puppets culture once we're up in the studio.
What's the biggest strength of this band? It doesn't even have to be musically. What you see as being the biggest strength?
The biggest strength is probably just the group of guys that are in this band together. We've been together for a number of years, and the lineup has never changed.
Wow, that's impressive. At least in today's modern day, where nobody seems to get along, or every other two records there's at least one change. So that says a lot about those get-togethers.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Great group of guys. Great group of guys.
They're having a great time recording, so why stop it? Let's just have a reason to get together. So I love it.
Basically, yeah.
I love it. I love it. Now, when it comes down to your drums, do you approach each EP record differently? What's your approach coming into the recording sessions?
I'm really loose about that. I just kind of let it flow. Now, obviously, we'll have demos and stuff that we take with us to go to the studio, so that we have a general idea of like the structure of the song, which will wind up being changed anyway once the producer starts getting his hands on it. But I'll be very loose with it. Like I'll come in with a general idea, but it morphs into something completely different by the time we get done with just doing the drum tracks. So I don't really go in with a certain mindset per se. I just feel it out, because a lot of my training, if you will, as far as drumming goes, was in jazz band in high school, and that's just a lot of just feeling it out. So that's kind of how I write. I just feel it out, just go from there.
This is a huge departure from playing jazz, I must say. But I mean, maybe you can still do some jazz hands behind the drum kit, but definitely a massive departure from that. Now, is there a specific sound, or is there something specific to the way your drums come across, that regardless of how you feel it, that specific element has to be there in order for this to be a Suicide Puppets sounding album?
Yeah, a double kick. Yeah, double kick. I've got to use double kick some way, some shape or form, either with quick triplets or just something to accent something, or 16th notes or whatever. It's got to have double kick.
And who's your biggest influence as far as drumming is concerned?
I have two. One is Buddy Rich from the big band era, and the other one is Vinnie Paul from Pantera.
Wow, wow. What do you take if you had to pinpoint from those two influences something specific in your drum style? Which one would be which?
The double kick aspect would obviously come from Vinnie Paul, and then all the technical stuff that definitely comes from Buddy Rich, from like the jazz stuff.
Do you practice a lot when you're not with the band? Are you a drum head? I don't even know if that's a thing, but if that's not a thing, it's going to be a thing as of today. Are you a drum head?
I would say, yeah, that's probably a fair assessment. Yeah, I have my own studio in the basement. I got a couple kits down there, and I'll just go down there. I'll practice for at least 3-4 hours a day.
I'm sure your neighbors love you.
I don't really care what they think.
That's the right answer. That was the answer that I was looking forward to. Now, you guys I believe you guys are self-releasing this EP on October 13th. Was there a specific decision why to go with the self-release? Did you guys thought about it to go with a label? Like, what was the thought process?
Well, it's not a self-release. This is being released by M&O Music, which is a label out in France.
All right, I didn't know that. I thought it was a self-release, so that's
no, that's all right. That's all right. They're more of a boutique label, but that they're releasing it for us.
And what's your expectations from this EP? Do you guys have a vision board whenever you're releasing something on what do you want out of that release?
That's a very fair question. I've never thought of that before. I really don't know if we have anything specific in mind per se. We just really want to, push ourselves out there further than we have, the last few years, and get out there and tour a lot more, and I guess just a lot more exposure.
You mentioned touring, and that's a good one because a lot of guys that I talk to when we're talking about new releases, some bands will straight up tell you that the only reason we make music is so that we have a reason to go on the road. Are you guys a little bit like that, or you just creative and you want to create music regardless of the touring opportunities come around or not?
It's a little bit of both. Hell, the last tour we did was in 2021. We toured with Soulfly, and we haven't toured since. But this is the first album we put out since that tour, so I guess it kind of goes hand in hand. You could say.
How was the tour with Soulfly?
I'm sorry.
How was the tour with Soulfly?
That was awesome. It was probably one of the best tours we've ever done. Max was great. Gloria was great. On that tour, Dino from Fear Factory was playing guitar for him. Everybody was great. Their entire camp. We got along with everybody really well. I couldn't have asked for a better tour.
No, but if you could ask for a better tour, who would be your bucket list?
Bucket list? Fear Factory is number 1. Static X is number 2, and then Rob Zombie falls in there at 3.
Wow, that would be a killer lineup. Either or, all of those options are great. Did you talk to Dino since he was on that tour with you guys about maybe giving you guys a shout next time he goes on the road?
We talk every now and again. When they re-signed with, was it Nuclear Blast? I believe that when they re-signed with Nuclear Blast, he reached out to us. It's like, hey, maybe we can do some tours together. We're like, hey, great, so obviously our management team's got to talk with them and then work out the kinks for that. But so hopefully.
So last question for you. Do you guys have any short-term plans following the release? The day is around the corner, October 13th. You're going to blink and it's going to be gone. So do you guys have any short-term plans, release show, anything along those lines?
Yeah, we actually have an EP release show the day after it drops. So October 14th, we have an EP release party at Love Drafts in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. We were supposed to have a show the next day, but unfortunately that got canceled. But we do have we have a Halloween show also at the end of the month, October 28th, up in Saratoga Springs, New York. And then after that, we're kind of doing a little bit of a lull because we have something else coming along that I can't say yet, but soon. It'll be announced very, very soon.
Oh, so you guys got a pretty busy schedule short term.
Yes, yeah, short term, absolutely, yeah.
All right, so Suicide Puppets, they're releasing Beyond the Veil October 13th. I heard it already. I loved it. It's a very cool release. It's a short one, so it's easy to digest, but that's the beauty of an EP. It's like fast food, and it doesn't matter how many steaks you have at home. Sometimes you just feel like going out for a burger. So take it as that, and that's a compliment. So, Veritas, thank you very much for your time today, man. I really appreciate talking to you. I hope to see you guys at some point north of the border playing some Toronto shows, so we can talk a little bit more about horror movies and serial killers.
Hell
And
yeah, man.
exchange notes.
Absolutely.
I know it sounds like a horrible thing to talk about, but like, hey,
Is
whatever.
it though?
Yeah, I know. I'm the same way. Like, I spend all my time looking for those kind of shows on Netflix and all of these other streaming platforms. I'm obsessed. What can I say?
Absolutely. Hell
All
yeah,
right,
man.
man. All the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you.